networking should be relationship building. And if you need it, it's needing something and it's transactional. Always follow up. Just like, thank you so much for your time. It's respectful and a lot of people don't do it. You need to get over the embarrassment of asking people on coffee chat. That VP of marketing that you think is incredible, she was an intern at one point too. So you should not be embarrassed about asking for help from other people.
I really cannot believe you matched me. Like, we need to talk about that. Like, I have never sent a picture to a guest of what I was wearing and then had them show up in the same top. like it wasn't even like, oh, you know, like the universe wasn't like getting us to match.
Like I fully copied you. Wait, can I be so honest? I was on vacation for 2 weeks. I've not done laundry. And I was like, this is one of my only shirts I like that I haven't worn this week.
Oh my God. Wait, actually though, I'm obsessed because
I fully copied you.
I love it. I literally love it. Like I love it so much.
Oh,
like I'm so happy.
I thought it would be good. I thought it would be a little
how
matchy.
hilarious it is masking my joy. That's the truth.
Anyway, thanks for having me.
Where should we even begin?
I think
should we start at the coffee we had 2 days ago where we met the first time?
Yes.
Oh my God, the entire time I was like thinking, I need to create a slot for her on my podcast that doesn't exist because we are literally speaking the same words the entire time.
For 3 hours straight.
Yeah.
And then we tried to leave without paying.
Yeah, that was really embarrassing. Oh my God, I don't want to talk. When we're together, it's like a little bit problematic.
I love it.
We were like at this cafe for like almost 3 hours. Fully, I thought it was 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Like we both had something to go to. And we both frantically jumped out of our chairs and started walking out. And he gets like, oh, did you guys want to pay?
We were like, oh yeah, I'd rather not go to jail tonight. So with love to bed.
Dining and dash is not in my list of accomplishments.
Those are the best conversations when you just lose track of time.
I
Like we
know.
were fully like in it. Like we were in debate mode.
Yeah.
We were going in on
We were like
controversial topics.
discussing our life philosophies, our
Yeah.
purpose. Like it was great.
It was
And we're
awesome.
gonna do it all over again on the
Yes.
What coffee chat was that for you that week?
What day was it? That was my third.
Third.
Yeah.
It was a Tuesday. It was a Monday.
It was Monday. Oh, then I lied. Then
Okay.
it was my second.
Oh, second.
Yeah.
on a
My
Monday.
week, I have had one of those weeks where it's like meeting, coffee chat. Like, you know how it is because you have those weeks that are slower. And then that's when I feel like I reach out to people, I plan things. And then I'm like, I need to get better at actually like planning things more than 1 week in advance because I just then stack my day.
That's good though. Like,
So,
you're busy. Do you have like
it's
a
good.
rule, like how many coffee chats you aim for?
It really depends. I like to have one in-person thing per day. So, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this, but obviously working, freelance, solopreneur, whatever we want to call it, I don't have an office or I don't have coworkers. So I'm an extreme extrovert. So I know for myself, my own mental sanity, I need to have some kind of in-person experience per day. So whether that's in a brand event or whether that's just a random coffee chat from someone I met on the internet or planning something with friends, I try and do one of those every day.
Oh my God, you're gonna hate what I'm about to say,
What
which
are you
is
about to
I
say?
literally do the exact same thing. I force myself to do it, of course. I literally force myself to see at least one person once a day. But my reason, I'm also an extreme extrovert. So
Yeah. No.
I
really?
don't do this because I really
Never again.
I don't actually do it because I'm extreme extrovert and I need to like charge my battery here.
Yeah.
I actually do it because I want to create at least one piece of content every day. And I force myself to wear makeup and get dressed to go do something. And then on my way out, I create something.
Mhm.
And I actually do it to fuel my own content machine.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
I know that if I am not looking and feeling my best, I'm not going to get myself to turn on the camera and make
Mhm.
some content that day. Like
So
it
true.
sounds superficial that I feel like I need to wear some makeup before I'm on the camera, but hey, whatever you need to do to get yourself that consistency of content creation. And I'm also a solopreneur. Like I don't have the traditional office coworker stuff. So like
Yes.
I have to go and plan my own things to literally get out of my PJs that day.
I feel you. And
Yeah.
I know some people work well in their sweats. It's like I can't do that. I feel like I work better when I look good, I feel good, and it bounces off of each other. So I'm the same way. I'm like, I need to get out of the house.
Yes.
Got him here.
Okay, obsessed. We're basically like fully twinning, like even
Yeah.
our lives now.
Yes.
Great. And New York is the best place to do this.
Yeah.
And you did not grow up in New York. You grew up in the Midwest.
Chicago
Tell us
suburbs.
about that.
Yes, I'm from the Chicago suburbs originally, just like 20 minutes north of Chicago. If you're familiar with Mean Girls, that was my high school.
Okay.
So that was interesting. But I loved it. I mean, I had great childhood growing up, really close with my family. And then I went to the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. I did their direct admit business undergrad program. And I always knew I wanted to move to New York. So a couple months after graduation, and I've been here since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell us about your high school experience. What was that like?
Oh, baby. Overall it was really positive. I'm so
Okay.
thankful for it. I had a good group of friends that I found. It took some time. My sophomore year of high school, I had a really bad case of pneumonia, which is so random. Like, what teenager gets pneumonia?
Yeah.
I missed, I think, a month of school. And then for another month was in a program getting back into my health and my classes. So that was a little bit hard socially. I was playing tennis. And then because of that, I didn't make the tennis team for the next year, which turned out to be the biggest blessing in disguise ever, because that's when I really started getting serious about music. And so instead of playing tennis, I had played guitar, piano, and sung up until that point. I then was like, you know what, I'm going to go full into this. And my school extracurricular was then playing music at restaurants.
Wow.
So that made up a big portion of my high school experience.
And you still do that now in New York.
I do now. I didn't for years, for 2 years.
What made you realize that was really important to you?
It's when you're an artist or a musician, like, it sounds so cheesy, but you can't not do it.
Mhm.
Like, something in your soul, you will feel this cognitive dissonance of, you should be doing this, and why are you not
Mhm.
doing it?
Yeah.
And that just became so loud that I was like, fine, I'll do it. And now I'm so happy that I am again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love we were actually talking about this, talking about how it is so critical and important to do things fully for your soul and for joy. Like,
Mhm.
things that spark joy actually fuel your productivity, they fuel your creativity.
Yeah.
It's actually what gets you in other parts of your life to the next level. It's like really important.
So important. And I think sometimes our culture is so obsessed with productivity that we lose this notion of it's okay to do things that do not better yourself in any way, even though we know they do better yourself.
Mhm.
But I feel like there can be this toxic personal growth mentality of, you need to be doing something that gets you ahead or will get you an internship or gets you in your career. And it's like, actually, to be a well-rounded human being, it's really important to nurture your soul as
Yeah.
well. And the business books don't always talk about that.
And like, especially in interviews, like you could be the best engineer in the world. You could have like this amazing experience on your resume, but if you can't literally have a conversation,
Yeah.
you don't, if your character isn't, if your stories are not interesting, if your character is not interesting, like if you are not personable, like you're not getting anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's really important to develop that.
Totally agree with you. And a lot of my content when I started out on TikTok, now I'm a full-time content creator as of five or 6 months, which is crazy. My content in the beginning was very much actually just about that, about networking, about LinkedIn, about the importance of building those soft skills in business. Because while I was doing my classes, when I was in my accounting classes in Excel, all these areas, I felt like I wasn't really good at them. I wasn't exceeding in them. But people I would talk to for networking chats just really emphasized the importance of what they called soft skills. Came to this realization that those skills are actually very, very important. And sometimes we undervalue how important they are. So that was actually how I started posting on TikTok, was about that too.
Wow. And what was that original, like, I guess, genesis of you being like, I need to post content?
I was in this brand management class with a professor named Kelly King. She's amazing. And we had a little mini segment on building a personal brand and why that was important. And I read this book, and I read the book in a day. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to start building a personal brand. It just started as an experiment. This was my junior year of college. And it takes you through this personal brand experiment of thinking about, what do people go to you for help? What do your friends know you for? What are things that you're just known for? It's like, oh yeah, Piper's really good at that. And I just had this knack for working with people and setting up conversations and connecting with people. So I was like, you know what? Let me just talk about networking and post TikToks about it. And so I posted a couple TikToks just about that. And then I started an internship. And we're not going to name names, but the internship basically asked me to stop posting on social media. And so then I didn't post another video for a year, which is my biggest regret, by the way. And then I picked it back up I took it really seriously at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023.
Yeah, and I remember when we talked about it, you were basically saying they said it's fine, but they basically didn't say it's fine. They were like subtly like no.
Yeah.
And then that fear, obviously when you're young and you're early in your career, like, oh my God, what if they fire me? What if this internship doesn't lead to my next thing? Like you don't really know the right answers.
Don't know the right answers. And at that point, that internship was the most important thing in the world to me.
Of course.
And I thought that was what was going to further my career, to turn into a full-time offer. I soon realized that's not what I wanted. And of course, hindsight's 2020. Now looking back, I'm like, I wish I would have been like, F you, and just tripled down on my posting, because that's actually what would have benefited my career. But you don't know that.
But also like personal branding is like a very new concept. It's now becoming very obviously important.
Yeah.
But it wasn't obviously important back then. Like I didn't have a personal brand back then. Like I didn't even know it was like a real thing. Like I would say like you were ahead of the curve. Like you were being actually talking about that in your classes. Like I would definitely was. Like no one was telling me that. I only very recently discovered the importance of this, and then have now seen firsthand how that has brought basically all the opportunities in my life, and it has very much brought me more in tune with what I feel is really authentic to me and like what I want to do. I think that's also a secret power of content, which is it really helps you figure out like who do you really want to be? What do you actually care about? It also forces you to basically publicly embarrass yourself.
Yeah.
And literally go through the cringiest of cringe. And there's basically no way around it. Like there's only one path. It's like through the cringe mountain, of course.
Yes.
And I feel like you kind of really know that through those experiences who your real supporters are, you know, where you're actually meant to go, like things that click that versus don't. And it's this extremely like challenging experience, but it's like self-development 101.
Yeah. Oh my God. You just like, I could go on for hours about that. You just said all of the things that keep me up at night. It's true, because I heard someone say once, embarrassment is the cost of entry. I love that phrase. Of like anything you do when you start, it's going to be embarrassing. It's going to be extra embarrassing when it's on a public forum. So people see you try and fail. Before, I feel like with businesses, you know, like you can make mistakes in your career or business and it's not on display for the world. If you're a content creator or if you're a founder building in public, you make a mistake, everyone now has an opinion about it. So I actually had a really big mental shift of going from, I kind of, before I got into this space, had a little bit of a negative connotation about influencers, you know, because you hear things, people have negative stereotypes. And now being in it, anyone who chooses to put their lives openly on the internet, I'm like, I have so much respect for you.
Yep.
Because it's not easy. You have to be a little crazy to do it, myself included.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of strategy that actually goes on that like the viewer doesn't always understand. Or
yeah. It's in some ways, I'd say gamification of your own life, because you're putting serious stake in the game. And if all of a sudden you're going to say to the world you're going to do something, how embarrassing if you don't do it.
Yeah.
Or all of a sudden you say, whatever, I want this thing.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing if you want something and then you don't actually do some work to actually go towards it. And yeah, it's really scary, and it's like it's not for the normal person. Like it definitely puts you in this like emotional roller coaster on a day-to-day basis. But I don't know, the way I look at it is like, why would I not want to live my life any other way other than like with crazy stake in the game?
Yeah, it's actually an accountability strategy. I feel like too, where it's like if you're gonna say you're gonna do something and then people are watching it, you got to do it. Like there's been times where I had started a series on TikTok and then kind of fell off, and people in my comments will be like, "Hey, what happened to that?"
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay.
Like, people care apparently.
I know, and it's
validating too. It's good feeling.
But
yeah. I want to touch on the stigma of influencers, because in a weird way, because I grew up in the Bay and I was like very much surrounded by Silicon Valley and tech, I was very removed from the influencer world, which I think is my crutch, but also my superpower, where I'm not surrounded by like alternate opinions of what this industry is like. And there's the word influencer isn't even something that's like talked about in my hometown.
Wow.
So I kind of went into it being like, oh, like I don't really even know if this is good or bad, or people like it or not, or respect it or not. And it kind of took away the stress from it, where it's like, it doesn't really matter if I fail or succeed here because no one's expecting anything. Versus if you come from a society, or like come from people who maybe they have other influencers that they talk about or they look up to, there's this like deep stigma that's evolved from that. And also just seen as like not a real career sometimes. But then I'm kind of like, well, I'm making more money here than in my job and I have way more flexibility in my time. So how could that not be a real career? So that's my long way of asking. Like, tell me all about what this stigma is that you've experienced and like what you think like people perceive and think about this when they're on the outside versus the inside.
It's such an interesting thing, and it's for me, it manifested in limiting beliefs that I had to get over, and that was because, like I said, I grew up in this area where I was exposed to a lot of wealth in the beginning. Like, going to the Mean Girls High School, there were people whose parents were founders of very well-known companies and brands, which was kind of unique being from Chicago, and then in the Midwest, I also saw just, like, kind of what a normal American life looked like. So, I think early on it was interesting to see that. And then we also saw a lot of emphasis on vanity and what people were doing. All to say, I was an early adopter of Instagram as a user, and because of that, I saw, like, people start to post, my high school started to be active, and it was very much what we think of as Instagram, this over curated, over filtered photos and highly edited photos. And I saw that both from the first generation of influencers that were coming up and like people actually in my high school, like acquaintances and friends. And I just got so turned off by it, I think. And as the concept of influencers became more well known, it was like the classic, like, girl taking a selfie and like just this idea that it was very vain and it was very shallow, very superficial. And so I was like, well, I want nothing to do with that because I don't want to identify with all of that. And I think that was some just external programming and honestly a little bit of misogyny that was put in my brain. And that was just my perception of influencers for the longest time of like, oh, they just want to take pictures of themselves. It's vain, which I obviously had this internal conflict because I'm like, well, I love taking pictures of myself. Like, I'm a performer. I love being on stage. I love like putting on a show. So that really cemented into my head, like, this is not what smart girls do, or this is not what people with personalities do. And that's a false negative belief. And it took me a long time to actually get over that to the point where I was seeing other people create careers and create brand personas and personal brands on social media in a way that was very inspiring to me, in diverse ways, in ways where their personality and their intelligence came through as well, while also sometimes just being fun and silly for the sake of fun and silly. So, all to say, long-winded way of saying it took me a while to really understand the options of what it meant to be an influencer or a content creator because there was a lot of negative stereotypes.
Yeah, I mean, limiting beliefs are the genesis of why people don't do anything.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to have limiting beliefs on something if you've never seen it being done before. And that's why I think women have been held back for so long because whether it's in tech or in finance, we don't have these day-to-day role models in our life. They're not easy to grasp, and social media breaks that third wall. It makes it actually very easy for us to live in a random city that no one's ever heard of and then watch the POV of the finance girl in New York who's killing it in those rooms. She might be the only woman in that room, but it makes it that much more inspiring to that girl to break through her limiting beliefs and maybe she could also be in finance. And that's literally how we make these industries less male dominated. So that is how I've always seen social media. I never saw it like that. But the way that you're describing it is 100% how I think how the majority of people see it. And very much like I think I come from this bubble, but I'm I want more people to like kind of get rid of that. And I do think that social media has also changed as well, right? Like I think there's less of that stigma. Knowledge creators are a huge thing, like realizing, hey, actually you can reach so many people and you can share knowledge and be inspiring and that's can change so many people's lives on such a massive scale that quite literally nothing can do anymore. And sometimes I laugh like, are books gonna cease to exist? Because like those are ways that we spread knowledge, but it's a lot easier to spread knowledge off of an internet post than a book nowadays.
And it's also just our brains are getting used to different mediums. Our need for instant gratification is going up. Our attention is going down. Like there are things that when you look at the statistics as a whole, it's kind of concerning. But to your point, it's the way why I was kind of embarrassed for a while to say that I was a full-time content creator because I feel like people hear that and they would think that I'm wasting my degree or wasting my potential. And that was something that I just had to deal with. And now I'm like, no, no, no. Like being a full-time content creator can mean so many things. Like I think it is a form of entrepreneurship, depending on how you do it. So it's been cool to feel that growth. And now I'm choosing to view this for myself more as like this is a business, just like how I worked for a business previously, but now I am the business. And I'm trying to, as weird as it sounds, monetize myself
Mhm.
and my thoughts and my opinions. And I think of myself more like now in the media space versus just saying I'm on social media because it's so much more than that.
Totally. And on top of that, in the worst case that you want to go into doing something else and not be a content creator, all this time has done is open that many more doors for you, got that many people to know about you, where whenever you're ready to go the next thing, you've actually created more
Mhm.
optionality for yourself.
Mhm. It's kind of like proof of concept for yourself for marketing. We've come a long way since that story I told you about my internship getting mad at me for posting. That was in 2021. And since then, we've seen the way that employers, big companies are using UGC or employee generated content to sell products. Yes, number one, but number two, also increase their brand reputation as an employer. So I think as long as you're not posting like defamatory, inappropriate things of yourself on on the internet, I do think that even just being in business in corporate America, having a personal brand in social media most of the time is just only upside.
Totally. Can you share a little bit more actually how you got your first job out of college and if
Yes.
personal branding had any part in that?
Oh yeah, every part in it. So I worked a lot through college. I had the option to graduate a year early, decided not to do it, but was just working almost like full-time equivalent my senior year. So just had my a couple internships, interned at a healthcare tech startup 1 year as well. Did a project-based internship at a branding agency while I was in school. And then senior year was working the marketing arm of a financial institution, we can just say to keep it simple. And then when I graduated, I realized I didn't want to go full time with what I was doing and I wanted to join a startup. So I just started reaching out to the people in my network, people on LinkedIn, people that I knew were really well connected, saying, "Hey, I'm graduating." I know the hiring timeline for marketing is way different than the timeline for my friends who are in finance. It's a little bit more last minute. And I knew that going in. Let me say, if you're a recent grad or going to graduate listening to this, do not think that you need to graduate with a job. Hot take, but you don't. I did not graduate with a job, and I knew I was going to be just
Especially like
fine
you said in marketing where like they only know their marketing needs right before.
right before.
Yeah,
Where fine,
especially at a startup.
it's crazy. Yes. Whereas like in finance, my brother, when he was a sophomore, got his full time offer, like for when he graduated. Like that's crazy. So marketing doesn't do that. So I graduated without a job, knew I wanted to be at a startup, started networking my butt off or following up with people I had already networked with, which is key. And then someone put me in touch with the founder of the company that I ended up working for almost 2 years. And we had what I thought was a coffee chat. Just have really no context. They were just like, "Hey, you two should connect." I'm like, okay. And then it kind of turned into a job interview on the phone. And that was that. I think I had two more calls with the rest of the team. And then I started a month later.
Wow. So tell us your like secret networking tips. Like how can we all also network away into
Yeah.
our jobs of our dreams?
Yes. God, I mean, I could go on for
Top
hours
3,
about
top
this.
3.
Top 3, network when you don't need it because networking should be relationship building. And if you need it, it's needing something and it's transactional. So start networking when you don't need it, but you just want to build relationships. Um, Number 2, always follow up. So I see this whether I'm meeting someone for the first time or going to brand events or they have a coffee chat with you, always send a thank you. Just like, thank you so much for your time. It's respectful, and a lot of people don't do it, so it makes you stand out. Super simple thing. Um, and number three, you need to get over the embarrassment of asking people on coffee chats or like corporate dates or whatever you need to call it. You just need to get over it because it's so embarrassing in the beginning to send a message on LinkedIn and be like, "Hey, can we get coffee?" But everyone does it. And that's what I would always say is like that VP of marketing that you think is incredible and has her shit together and is a badass, which she probably is, but she was an intern at one point too. And she definitely had mentors that helped her. So you should not be embarrassed about asking for help from other people.
What do you
My
say
top
to
three.
get them to convince them to actually go on that coffee chat with you?
Oh, like when I reach out to people
Yeah,
networking,
exactly.
it's so dependent on the situation that you're in. Every outreach message, if you're sending a cold outreach message to someone, it should be very personalized and it should be short, personalized, and also I think like really specific to what your objective is. You don't want to waste someone's time. So, short to the point, lead with, what you want. If you want a coffee chat just because you want to learn more about the industry, or if you're applying to a job at the company and you want to hear about their experience. So be upfront with that. And then also do your research to try and find common ground. So if you went to the same school, that's amazing. Bring that up. If you're from the same city, that's amazing. Bring that up. Just anything to try and build an instant connection.
Okay.
That's the short version.
Okay,
Yeah.
loves. How can we take this into like entrepreneurship? Right? Like
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur now.
Mhm.
You quit your job.
Mhm.
Yeah. So how
Crazy.
how have you created this life and this income for yourself outside of a traditional W-2 paycheck?
It's a loaded question,
Yeah,
and
we
I
have to
love it.
get into all of it.
Yeah. Well, when I quit my job, I was making just enough money on the side that I could cover my rent. And so I was like, okay, well, my basic needs are covered and I'm unhappy in this situation. So I'm going to leave the situation, which it is just an advisable thing to do when you're young. And I had the self awareness of I'm 23 years old, live in New York City. I'm making enough money to pay my rent, to feed myself. I have no dependents. This is the time
This is the time to
to
do
do
it.
something.
Yeah.
So I realized that, and then my intention was to get another marketing job. So I was working for this startup for almost 2 years, doing basically all sorts of digital marketing, everything. And I thought that I was going to get another marketing job right away. And then things just kind of started to snowball. Like it was a partnership here and there where then the financial burden eased because I was like, okay, I can pay my rent for next month. And then it happened again. It's like, okay, now I'm having fun. Now I'm meeting people. Now I'm going on podcasts. Now I'm finding about all the opportunities that people are making careers from having a social media presence. And I just became really interested in that. And then I had a couple really cool partnerships that were like dream partnerships of mine. Starbucks was the big one. And that really changed something in me because I was like, okay, there's something here. This is actually a real opportunity to use my marketing skills and to build something for myself. And once you get a little taste of that, it just became so addictive and fun.
I mean, we're talking about you're like, did the Starbucks partnership come to me because I quit my job? Or if I was in my
Mhm.
job with the Starbucks partnership, would
Would
have
it
still
have
come?
come? And you could play that game all day. You
Mhm.
never know. But I think that this is my woo woo thought. But I think that when you put yourself out there and you leap and take the net away, you have to burn the boats, burn the bridges, whatever that book is. Like you have to make yourself take the leap because if you have a safety net most of the time, you're not going to go all into something. So could I have gotten those brand deals if I still had a full-time job? Maybe, but I don't know if I would have worked as hard to create the short form content that made Starbucks notice me.
Yeah. Like you're going to literally survival instinct. You're going to try a lot harder.
Yeah.
And then that's going to make better quality content. And those brands are going to notice you.
Yeah.
And they'd be crazy to not.
Yeah. And I think there's got to be some self-awareness of how high your risk tolerance is, right? So like I cannot emphasize that enough. Like I'm not saying quit your job if you're unhappy. Like no, no, no. Take a hard look at your life, at your expenses, and then make the decision that's right
Mhm.
for you.
Yeah, like what is your risk appetite? Especially because, I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts on this, but content creation, being an influencer, it's very inconsistent, the
Yeah.
income. So that I would say like that falls on the spectrum of like high risk appetite. How do you deal with that? Or like how do you think about that?
I have done a lot of self reflection. I've just always been a risk taker. I remember in third grade, it was like parent teacher conferences, and every kid, the teacher had written like an adjective for every kid on the board or like a phrase. It was like, Jimmy is compassionate. And it was like Piper, risk taker. And my dad was like, what the
How old were you?
I was in third grade.
Oh
So
my
I don't know. How old are you in third grade?
small. You're small.
I was small. Yeah. So I think my parents kind of were like,
Wow.
okay, like that was just kind of funny that was the thing that she took. So big part of my identity there. And also interesting and worth noting is both of my parents work in professions where they are not salaried. So I think growing up, I saw that and that just I was used to that. Like it's kind of for both of them a more eat what you kill scenario. Dad's an attorney, has his own law practice, and my mom's a dentist. So they both work off of projects or however you want to define it.
Yeah. Wait, it goes back to like limiting beliefs we talked about earlier. It's like
Mhm.
you're actually seeing your parents do this and create a life for themselves outside of the traditional paycheck that makes
Yes,
it possible for you to imagine that you're capable of it.
totally. And having those role models are so important. I just posted a video late last night that is getting some good traction of just this rant of me being like, I feel almost like bamboozled. Like I feel disillusioned that there are so many ways out there to make a living, so many career options that are very creative and random that I never knew existed living in the Midwest. Like everyone I knew in the Midwest was like doctor, lawyer, salesperson, like could be described in a word. And then I came to New York and you just meet people with the randomest jobs that are killing it. And so I think my mind kind of just expanded of like, wow, there's a lot of ways to make a living
Yeah.
and have fun.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like to think about it, and I do think this is, again, like, a little bit more of a take that you have to be a set type of person to really, like, think about it this way, and
Mhm.
there's a concept also of, like, work to live and live to work, right? Like, which one
Yeah.
are you? I think if you're I live to work, like, I think this is the take for you, which is ask yourself, what is that one thing that you can be top 1% in? It can literally be juggling, dude. If you can be the number one, like, you're gonna make a shit ton of money,
Yeah.
like, period.
I love
So
that.
there's no such concept as like a career. You can create whatever career you want.
Yeah.
And guess what? The most effortless thing you can do is be authentically yourself. Like 100% yourself and 100% doing the thing that you love and you're obsessed with.
Yeah. And building that around your personal strengths. And I will say something cool we did in college was I remember we had this fancy company come in and do like a strengths finders test. My number one was entrepreneur. My number two was performer. That was my result
That
from my
makes so much sense. That is you.
I was like, why did I forget that? That was like my first week of school.
Yeah.
And that was my like business school official result was entrepreneur and performer. And still I went through 3 years of college thinking that I wanted to be in
Wow.
corporate. I don't know why.
You know, I saw this piece of content the other day that basically said like at age 7 is actually the best time to figure out what you need to do with the rest of your life because
That gives me goosebumps.
you're mature enough to realize and identify what a real job could be and like you
Wow.
can actually make money from a job and like trade value from that. But you're also naive enough to believe you're capable of anything. So you don't
That's so
have any
true.
limiting beliefs. Isn't that insane? And I'll tell you for me when I was about 7, I told everyone I wanted to be an artist. And I was doing art class at the time. I've been a painter and a like designer like my entire life, like just
Mhm.
very hobby, like never shared it, never really even couldn't even contextualize the concept of a career as an artist because that's just a wild thing. Like that's not even a job when you like grow
Yeah.
up in like the Bay Area, like around like people in tech. Like they're like you say artist, they're like that's not a real job.
Yeah.
But it's just funny, like, what I'm doing today, like, I think it's art. Like, content creation is art,
Yes.
and painting a picture not necessarily is, like, my true calling, but I always
Mhm.
knew I was an artist. Painting a
Yes.
picture is just one path
Medium
of
of
being
art.
an artist. And also writing, I love writing. Writing is a huge part of content creation,
Yeah.
and that is art, and it's so much about who I am today that feels very authentic. I knew at
You.
7.
You
I said artist, but, like, I just needed to allow myself to be creative and be the artist I needed to be, and I kept rejecting that. I was like, "I have to be an engineer. I
Mm.
have to do all these, like" because I mean, I wasn't bad at it, like, I was pretty good.
Mhm.
I picked it up very fast, and
Sure.
so that's the other thing is, like, you could be good at something, doesn't mean it's your true calling in life.
That's
You could
true.
just be smart.
You could just be
It's not
smart.
that deep.
I think wait, can I show you what I was doing at
Y
7?
yes.
You can cut this if you want. I have a visual.
No, show me.
The reason I know this is I was looking at this today and I feel like I'm going through this awakening of figuring out what I want to do with myself. And my parents sent me these pictures from when I was 7 years old with my dad on stage in my little zebra dress.
Look at that.
I'm like, I am
You're just like a
little
performer,
7 years old.
stunner,
My
cutie.
dad, I will describe it to the audio listeners.
Yes.
My dad got me this little microphone and I was on stage and we practiced this one song and it was just like it was so fun. I remember that feeling of being up there and being like, I love being in front of people.
Performer.
Yeah.
That's who you are.
But then you go into these institutions which are very valuable. College is a great thing. And my college was it was a big feeder school to a lot of the big consulting firms, the big accounting firms. And like you said, like you're good enough at it. Like I was very good in school always. But then I just think I've come to this point finally at 23 years old where I actually am more like my 7-year-old or 16-year-old self than I am like my 21-year-old self,
Yeah.
which is a weird feeling.
I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful because when we get older, we get jaded
Yeah.
and we get bitter and we
Yeah.
also are fed so many opinions by the world and we're navigating all that so we don't know what's true. What is this our opinion or is this like a
Mhm.
collection of all this stuff that we've been taught through media and like all these like basically adults in our life pressuring us to go certain pathways. And of course, we respect them and we value their opinions, but then very quickly it becomes their opinions become blurred with ours.
Yeah.
And you stop hearing your inner voice. And it's really, really bad to lose that inner voice because if you lose your intuition, then you will be very far from ever being exceptional at anything
Yeah.
because it requires a great level of intuition and understanding of like what you're actually willing to put your heart and soul into. And if you can't put your whole heart and soul into something, you cannot be exceptional at it.
No.
And you also cannot put your heart and soul into something that you don't actually like. It's actually impossible, genuinely.
Really.
I think you cannot create passion out of nowhere.
I
I don't think you can invent passion.
know. And I think you can be good enough at something you don't
Sure,
like.
it doesn't mean
But
you're
like you
passionate.
said, you
You could
won't
just be good at it.
be exceptional at
Not
it.
exceptional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exceptional is like I'm willing to put 10,000 hours into it.
Yeah. And it hopefully doesn't feel like 10,000 hours.
It
If
won't.
you love something and
Yeah.
you're in that actual scientific like flow state, then that is where we as humans are like optimal for creating.
Yeah.
When you get into that area where it's just challenging enough, but just fun enough where you're like, I could do this for hours.
Totally. Like the 10,000 hours happens accidentally.
Yeah.
Effortless.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that.
totally. Well, it seems like your parents have been like very supportive throughout your entire life, especially on this journey that you've been on of going into full-time content creation. So like
Yeah.
let's talk more about that. Like how has that influenced and
Yeah.
made you Piper?
Oh. Um, I'm so thankful for them. I mean, I I do think you can make your own decisions and be successful in own ways if you do not have those parental role models. Because I believe you can find those role models other places, whether it's through books, interviews, whatever. I feel very fortunate that my parent role models were also very, very strong. And I look up to both of them, both as people, just their kindness and their emotional intelligence, and also in career aspects as well. So my mom, incredibly intelligent, very more like textbook smart, went to dental school, is a dentist.
And you're really close to her, right?
Yeah, she's like my best friend. She's she's just
Which is
my
more
biggest.
rare than you would think. Like, I don't think it's common for girls to be best friends with their moms. And I wish it was, but
I mean, you will see her on my TikTok and my Instagram. She has
oh,
been
I've
kind of
seen her.
getting into it a little bit more. She just started doing fitness coaching as well, so she's been doing content, but she is just my person. She balances me out more so. So my dad and I have more similar personalities, and my mom is a perfect partner to both of us because we can be all over the place. We can be like fiery up and down. My mom is German, so it's very like orderly. It's very patient. It's very like she's just the best. And so her and I are really close. I'm doing a partnership with Hard Rock Hotels next weekend, and they're having us stay and see Gwen Stefani. So she's coming with me. So
Wow.
it's been so fun
That's
to do.
epic.
Yeah, to do more like content things with her. But all to say, and then my dad was a really good role model in terms of like building your own career path. He was the first in his family to go to college. He worked all kinds of jobs to put himself through college, like quite literally cleaned toilets at Sears Tower in Chicago, like worked his way up. So I'm just really inspired by his mentality and his career path. And he also started his own law practice. So he's a lawyer, but he's also an entrepreneur, and had gotten into real estate then later in life. So they both are really inspirational from that career perspective. However, even more important is the way that they are supportive of me following my passions and dreams because I'm sure that's probably scary as a parent when your kid takes a risk, but they have been amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And your boyfriend's also very supportive.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, I feel like if you want to do something weird, you have to intentionally, and you can't pick your family, but you can pick your partner. You
Mhm.
have to surround yourself with people who get it
Yeah,
and who support you.
totally.
And I think he knows what he's in for. As I've been figuring it out, like he's always just my biggest supporter. I play music at this restaurant once a week. He goes every single week, sits by himself at the bar for the 2 or 3 hours that
That's I'm literally like, okay, this is like not the right time to do this the episode. Oh my god, that's
Yeah.
so cute.
Yeah.
That's actually it's very underrated like how big of a deal that is
Yeah.
because there's one thing to show up for your partner, but like every single time without fail, week by week, like
Yeah.
that's like huge. And I think you already know how special it is, but how do you think your understanding of a healthy relationship was defined? Because I think a lot of the times as women, we get ourselves in relationships with people that honestly, they're not that healthy for us
No.
and they are not actually great places where we can thrive and actually unlock our potential. So, how do we as women actually better define how to create safe spaces in our relationships and also like know what we deserve and like
Mhm.
what people should value in us?
I mean, I have the best example of relationship, my parents. Like they are what true love is. I literally just did a partnership with Shutterfly just now, made them a book for their anniversary and go on like a 2-minute rant about how much I love their relationship and how mushy it is and everything is so authentic about that. With that said, I still found myself in an 8-month long, very unhealthy, emotionally abusive relationship, even with that perfect example of my parents.
Wow.
So that actually really shifted my understanding about relationships because I think, especially in society, there is a lot of victim blaming that wrongfully goes on, or thinking that women who end up in abusive relationships like must be weak or must, it's not the type of strong, outgoing people that we see. That's so wrong. Like anyone can find themselves in a relationship that's controlling and unhealthy. And so yeah, that was pretty tough.
How do we as women recognize when it's unhealthy?
Um, I mean, I think you just know. I think you know. And it can be unhealthy in different ways. Like, I feel like it's important
So
to
you
talk
knew.
about. I knew pretty quickly. I mean, it's classic. Like, the first month of anything is great, because they want to hook you. Like, it's great. Everyone's on their best behavior. And then the true colors come out. But at that point, I was so emotionally bought in. And, you're told all these things, and people who love you are going to be like, okay, this is a little weird, but you're so bought into it, and then of course it progressively gets worse. Like it's literally a textbook cycle, but when you yourself are in it, it's really hard.
Mhm.
So I would say, advice wise, pay attention to how you feel about yourself, like when you're alone and that person isn't there,
Mm.
because if you're really quiet, you will hear that cognitive dissonance of your whatever heart, soul, brain, whatever word you want to use, being like, something's not right here. And it got so bad for me to the point where when I came home from college for the summer, my high school friends and my mom like had an intervention with me. They were like, "You're not you. Like your sparkle is gone. You are a different person. You need to get out of this relationship." And thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on you for like allowing them to say that to you and then also listening to them and knowing that they have their best intentive
Yeah, I
at
didn't
heart.
listen to them for like 5 months,
Oh, okay.
but but like
Not
it
me
was
just
like,
rewarding you for
no, no,
that.
no, 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 it's
But
good.
still,
It was like the third
like
time.
you needed that was probably like the start.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mom, I think, like, actually wanted to, like, hit me over the head with something because she knew it wasn't right, but you have to figure that out for yourself. No one can make you quit a job. No one can make you leave a relationship.
Mhm.
You have to have something inside you just flip when you're like, "Okay, now I'm ready
Yeah.
to make a change,"
Yeah.
even though it's scary.
Yeah. I mean, even for women especially, like I do think this is actually goes really well into the topic of financial freedom. And I think it's like that
Mhm.
much more important for women to have financial freedom
Yeah.
because if you are in a bad relationship or a bad marriage, like at least finances are not gonna be the reason why you don't leave, right? Like
Yes.
there's always gonna be other reasons, and those are kind of complex, but the worst reason is that you don't leave because of money. And like it's really critical that all women achieve financial freedom for themselves. Doesn't matter if your partner is super wealthy or not. Like it's completely irrelevant
Mhm.
because you need to like be able to stand on your own
Yep.
to have that person actually respect you, I think.
Yes. It is so important to have that. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does financial freedom look like for you?
Um, okay, I think financial freedom looks different for everyone because you have to define what's important to you. For me, it is, can I live a life where I have complete control of my time, and regardless of if I am physically working or not, I am making money or growing my business. So that is what makes me feel free when I think about having multiple passive income streams in place where I have systems that are going and generating revenue, income, value for me, even when I'm not working. That is what makes me feel free. And I'm working towards that. We're not there yet. But when I think of like what makes me go like, okay, that. It's having something in place that when I am having a shit day and don't want to work, I can just choose not to work. That's what freedom feels like.
Yeah, I love that
What
definition.
about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's extremely similar. I see it as, like, I own my own time.
Mhm.
Like, I get to decide when I wake up in the morning, I get to decide exactly how I make money that day or not make money or
Yeah.
whether and financial freedom is it's less of, like, this feeling of, like, "Oh, I don't need to make money anymore and I'm retired." It's more of, like, freedom of choosing how you make your money, right? Like, that's kind of how I see it because at the end of the day, if you get to this cycle of, "I'm gonna make this much money and retire, or this much money is gonna be good enough," it actually will never be good enough, and you'll be stuck in this perpetuating loop of, like, "I need more and more and more,"
Yeah.
versus defocusing on, like, when you're done making money and focusing more on asking yourself, "Is the way that I made money today something that is furthering me, like, personally, professionally, and, like, actually sparking joy in my life?"
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think it's more than that.
Yeah. And I've been thinking recently also about that concept of I think we will see uber wealthy people or uber successful people by whatever definition that will make a large chunk of money and then continue to work, continue to start another business, continue to do something. And people are like, aren't they done? Like, isn't that like no, because if you're an ambitious person who has high goals for yourself, you're never going to be satisfied just sitting there because progress is what makes us as humans happy. So, yeah, it might not be for the money anymore, but if chances are, if you're someone who has had a successful business or a successful career at one point, you're not going to want to just see that go away.
So true. I always say if you wanna make it as an entrepreneur, like, you can't be money motivated. It
Yeah.
actually like, it's impossible to succeed. Like, you have to be motivated by the actual journey and the impact that you're creating in your business versus, like, how wealthy you're gonna be at the end of it because, like, you simply will not survive the
Yeah.
trauma and the hardship it
Yeah.
requires to build a business, and at the end of the day, like, if you really sit down and calculate how many hours you put into building your business and how much money you made, even in the biggest, most wealthiest exits, you will if you do the math, you'll find that it's literally less than minimum wage. Like, you would have made more money working, like and working less hours, just doing a regular job. So if, like, that's actually your motivation, like, money, like, there's another path with more money,
Wait,
actually,
this is
ironic.
a hot take. I
Oh, yeah,
like it.
yeah.
I want to dig into this.
Yeah.
Um because okay, I my gut says I disagree with that a little bit.
Okay. I wanna hear it.
Only because I think what's so enticing to a lot of people about entrepreneurship is the idea of having some kind of an exit where you do get a large sum at once. Granted, I'm not saying it's easy or easier. We're not talking about that, but I think that's what has potential to be life changing to start generational wealth is yes, you're so right. If you work your way up and let's say you have the best job, you have a tech job or finance where you're getting paid, 200K, 300K, 500 like increases every year. That still is different than let's say you hustle for a couple years, don't make anything, but then you get a 10, 15, $20 million exit at age 31.
Mhm.
You invest that correctly. I would say you're in a better place than someone who
Yeah, but I mean, there's a few nuances there, which is one is like investments work with time. So like if you have a lump sum of 20 million, maybe if you got that money slowly, that investments would actually be worth more later. But I think that's actually less of the point that I'm trying. The more the point I'm trying to make is like 99.9% of acquisitions look one way but happen another, which is like most of that 20 million you're actually not pocketing. There's a lot of like
very
there's like
true.
debt, there's investors, there's employees who have equity. It's a lot more complex. I'm not saying that it never happens. I'm
It's
just saying
rare.
that it's quite literally like 0.0001%. Like when you see unicorn tech companies like
Yeah.
selling for $20 billion, sure, in that case, the math is not mathing.
Like, sign me up for that.
Yeah, like if I could
That's it.
self-select that,
Yeah,
sure, bro. But like I think you can be incredibly competent and successful and amazing, but literally be incapable of having a $20 billion exit. Like that's an
yeah.
insane amount of money. That's not even like real money. Like what the
Mm.
fuck is that number?
Yeah,
You
it's
know what I
crazy.
mean? I think like what's more realistic, 99.9% of like exits or entrepreneurs, it's like we said, like 10, 20 million, like something
Mhm.
around that's like more reasonable sums of
Yeah.
money. And to get an exit like that, fully bootstrapped, and then get that under a decade, right?
Yeah.
Like
It's rare.
it's so rare that you can't bet on that.
No, yeah.
And then what
It's
the
true.
reality is like there's so many entrepreneurs who make life-changing monies overnight, but it's it's with the cost of, okay, for 6 years, 7 years, whatever, every waking, breathing second, I was thinking and I was stressing, and
Yes.
calculate every minute of that, and if you were actually, let's say you're working a job for every minute of that, like it would actually
Yeah.
amount to less than minimum wage. It would, because the reality is a 9 to 5 is not a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
It
So
is
right.
1/3 of a
Yes.
24/7 job.
And that's exactly goes back so nicely to what we were talking about. If it's like it's knowing yourself and what you value more.
Yeah.
And what kind of life.
And if how you're actually working sparks joy in your life and actually is something you're passionate, authentic about, like, you will put more hours into it than a 9 to 5, because it won't feel painful to do so. And naturally, you will get greater output out of that. And so you will become more wealthy naturally, organically. So it's like I think it's important to, the point is like being motivated by the journey and not the like money at the end.
Yes. Yes.
Or it's like, I don't even think you're going to be willing to like go through that hardship. But
Mm.
I'm so confident that like those few entrepreneurs that wake up one day and have $20 billion in their bank account, like they never even wanted it. Actually, they were so much more inspired by like being maybe, and I think a lot of it is also social validation. Like maybe it's less about the $20 billion. It's more about like, I want to be a
Yeah.
billion-dollar tech founder,
Yeah.
like to say that I did that versus they need the money per se.
Yeah. Then I think the ego comes in.
Ego is
a
like
lot.
huge motivator. And
Yeah.
hey, if ego motivates you, actually I think it'll work. I
You,
said,
you think ego's stronger than money motivation?
well, I just think that it's not that it's stronger. It's that if you're motivated by money, you're not going to actually end up getting what you want. But if you're motivated by ego and you do actually sell your company, you kind of will be rewarded.
Yeah.
Your ego will be rewarded by society. Like we have trained society to reward that. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying having ego is good. I'm just saying like the tokenomics work. I don't know. Like
We have run the numbers. Results are in.
like, haven't you heard all those stories of founders who've made it and they go on positive, like, yeah, I was like bullied in high school, or like this my dad said I wouldn't be good enough. I wanted to prove them wrong, or this one person said, or like it's always comes from a place of like someone putting them down, them feeling insecure, and them having some sort of ego and being like, no, I want to prove these people wrong. And it drives and motivates them to like actually do it.
I so agree with you. I think that is.
It's like called the founder chip on your shoulder.
Yeah,
you need a chip.
You need a chip on your shoulder
Yeah.
of something.
Or
What's
or else
yours?
your life. Okay, this is your podcast. We're sticking with you. Moving on.
Okay, if you ever
I'll
want-
tell you after that.
Oh yeah. Well, okay.
If you want to know my chip on the shoulder, you have to watch my solos. That's what I'll say.
Okay, good plug.
Plugging my own shit.
Good plug.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think about this also in the context of like a dream job. Like if money was no object, if ego was no object, if the world did not exist, it was just you and you in the world,
Yeah.
like what would this dream job be with like no constraints?
I always say that my dream job is to get paid to be myself. Not really an answer, but I am doing a lot of soul searching right now and trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
Honestly, I'm happiest when I'm doing stuff like this, when I'm connecting with people, when I'm performing, whether that's speaking engagements in the business world or playing music and singing. That is what really makes me happy. So I'm trying to figure out what that job is. But if I could just yap with people all day long and play music and reach people emotionally, that would be what I would be doing.
So really the answer is you have the dream job. You're in the dream job.
Yes, so
Yeah.
we could bump up the salary. That would be nice. But
And that
we're
is
living
100%
it.
happening in
Yes.
due time.
Yeah,
Like of anything,
too.
like consistency opens all doors, truly.
Yeah.
So just like sticking through it is really all the ingredients you need to get there. I mean, obviously, first is recognizing your dream job, which you did. Like you were willing to take the leap and
Yeah.
actually go and pursue what is true to you.
Mhm.
Like that is huge. Like people do not do that. Like
Thank
you deserve the credit and recognition of that. It's big. But then you're gonna get all the money in the world. You just literally by waking up tomorrow and just like believing in yourself.
Yeah, which is it's so hard when you're in an area with a lot of people doing the same thing and it's all very public and all very visible.
Yeah.
So it can get really hard to stay motivated like that, especially when we talked about this literally yesterday, when what you're doing is so personal to you and then you create a piece of content or a piece of art or something vulnerable to you and you put it out there and it doesn't get the external reception that you anticipated. That can be really hard because it feels like, okay, no one's caring about what I'm putting out, but you have to be the one to care.
Yeah.
You have to care.
Yeah.
You have to keep going.
Yeah, totally. I think my biggest blocker in life right now, currently, for me to get to the next stage, I have not been able to detach from my work.
Interesting.
And I do think like this attachment is what's creating limiting beliefs, which is like stopping myself from truly like releasing and unlocking like truly who I could be, especially when it comes to public facing content.
Yeah.
So if you have any tips for that, like let me know.
I mean,
Because I think I think you can be self-aware that you need to detach and then simply do not detach.
yeah, I tell myself that every day.
Yeah.
Um, but I think you need to can't completely detach from it because if you
Yeah.
would completely detach from it, then it wouldn't be the passion that it is.
Right. Like so maybe
So
the answer is that detachment doesn't exist.
detach from
If
the
you care.
results, maybe.
Yeah.
I know Rick Rubin has a couple of theories on that, like creative theories of like staying attached to the art and the process. And I'm butchering this right now, but detaching from the external results. Because in theory, if you created something that was an act of creation that you liked and it did something for your soul, then that should be enough.
Totally.
Is that what gets you paid all the time? No, but that's the murky waters you get into when you do something that's a passion and turn it into your living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the right time to end it on something like
I'm like,
that.
I feel like we should end it on a lighter note.
No, because I want to stay with that. And I want to think about that because it's really important, like, to understand the fine balance between the two. I think doing both or expecting that is like because I think if you expect something that's unrealistic of yourself, then you will only fail. And like expectation versus reality is literally disappointment or happiness. Like
Yeah.
you are in full control of whether your reality is happy versus whether your reality like it sucks and it's sad, right? It's all about how do you set your expectations with yourself.
Yeah.
Then you perceive your reality in like a completely different way, right? And if I'm expecting myself to 100% detach in everything that I do, and then I'm waking up every day and I'm not detaching, then every single day I'm blaming myself and I don't feel good enough and I'm getting into a negative spiral versus I almost like go into and accept and be like, you know what? Actually detaching from this doesn't even make sense. Like I'm passionate about it, so it's hard for me to detach. And it's okay if I feel upset. Like allow myself to feel upset if it doesn't do well and then work harder and feel okay with that. That, you know, don't take it personally, but it's like, yeah, you need to work harder or you need to think about it differently or be more creative or whatever. And then when it in reality, maybe I might be happier because I'm like, this is just part of the process. And I'm just okay with it.
Part of the process.
Yeah.
And the last thing I will say is I would rather take that feeling any day over the feeling of feeling like I'm sitting on and wasting my potential. That was the worst feeling when I had that in the past before quitting my job. I just had that feeling of there's something else I should be doing out here. So at the very least, I know I can say that I tried. I can say that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a brave thing to do, but it's the right thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having
Twinning the whole
Sorry,
time.
sorry I matched you.
I
wish I
love
could say
it.
it
No,
was
I love it. I'm so happy you did.
Thank you for having me.